Kirsten Merrick, and I'm the founder and publisher of Philanthropy Women. And today I'm here to answer the second question for the Feminist Leadership Project, which is, why is feminism important to leadership in philanthropy? So this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because I have spent the last several years studying women's philanthropy and studying how women in the philanthropy industry are treated in terms of gender equality. So what we know about leadership in philanthropy is that at the very top there is a very big gender gap. In general, in the nonprofit world, women are kind of everywhere. In fact, some nonprofits have a percentage as high as 75% of women in their organization. However, when you get to the very top, things change. And in nonprofits with 50 million or more in revenue, there's only 18% women's leadership at that top level. So we know there is a serious gap there in the really high-level leadership that is often steering these very large philanthropic institutions. So that's number one for why it's important to pay attention to feminist movements and feminist ideas in the nonprofit and philanthropy sector. So why are there still so many problems with women getting into top leadership in philanthropy? I just have a few ideas that I'm suggesting here. This is by no means an exhaustive list of the reasons, but these are a few ideas that just stick out when I do my reading and thinking about this issue. So number one is that women are still conditioned to play a support role in most organizations. So in order to assume that role of wanting to be the high leader or someone in the very high level, you kind of have to work against these gender norms that are often telling you to, take a support role. And so that's one reason. Number two is women in nonprofits in all industries are still conditioned not to question authority. And this is a huge issue. I once had a client, I'm also a therapist, who worked in the nonprofit banking sector. And in her organization, she noticed that there were some irregularities in the supervisor above her, who happened to be a man. And she had great trouble questioning authority and raising her concerns about those issues. So the end result was, when she came to see me for help, she had been blamed for much of the problem that was created by her supervisor, and she was being disciplined for it. So, we talked a lot about how going forward, what were her learnings, and one big learning was that if she sees an irregularity, even if it's in someone above her, she needs to question it. She needs to use her voice to assert her leadership on that issue. So number three is undervaluing their own work. I think another social norm that is causing women to not rise to the highest level in leadership in philanthropy is that they undervalue their own contribution to the organization. So that process leads to them, again, being put more in of a support role instead of being able to take the lead. So why is it important for women to move into the top leadership of philanthropy? Lots of reasons, right? What we know from the research, particularly on women in business organizations, is that when women leaders are at the very top, they take a more inclusive approach. So they're more open to listening to all people in the organization. They really often are reaching out to people who are marginalized and who kind of need to be brought in to the organization. So that's huge, and it really aligns with feminist principles in general. Next is that women are often better listeners. So they actually absorb messages from their environment, and then they work with those messages to make change. So again, a very important trait that women carry that would really transform leadership in philanthropy. Women are also better at sharing credit. So if there's a project where there's been a real team effort and many people have put in to make something happen, women are more able to represent that as the reality, which is really important because that contributes to people really buying into the mission of an organization. So That's again a huge differential of women's leadership. And finally, women care less about hierarchies. So, it's not that we're not aware that there are levels and layers to organizations, but I think women approach it in a different way and in a very mindful way about where they stand in the hierarchy relative to another person and how they can accommodate for that to make the relationship as healthy as possible. So these are just a few of my ideas about why feminism is important to leadership and philanthropy. And I look forward to answering the next question from the Feminist Leadership Project. Thanks.